Okay, I think we're going to get started now. Welcome everybody back to the building committee meeting. I'd like to call the Concord Middle School Building Committee meeting to order. The date is Thursday, December 10th, and I appreciate everybody getting back on train here at 7:30 in the morning for our meetings. As you can imagine, I would just note that running the school right now is a full day operation, and we really appreciate everybody's willingness to meet at 7:30 so the school personnel can get back to their jobs, which are arduous these days, and navigating all the issues that are going on with the schools related to the virus. So thank you all for your willingness to meet at this time. I know it helps others who are working with their other jobs also, so I appreciate that. The first thing we do on the Zoom meeting, to refresh everyone, the first thing we do is do a little roll call to chronicle who is in the meeting. So I'm just going to go through the committee members, and I'll say the names, and if you just say here or present, that would be great. Stephen Crane.
I feel like this is the time of year where we should be saying presents.
Present, yeah, present. It's good to hear that we're all present, right? Jared Stanton.
Present.
Matt Johnson.
Present.
Lori Hunter.
Present.
Justin Cameron.
Present.
John Harris.
Present.
Russ Hughes.
Present.
Pat Nelson.
Present.
Kate Hanley.
Present.
Court Booth.
Present.
Heather Bout. Okay, I don't hear it. Frank Cannon.
Here.
Chris Popoff.
Present.
And sorry, Heather's here. I couldn't unmute for a sec.
That's all right. That's all right. We all struggle with that. Chris Popoff.
Present.
Charlie Parker.
Present.
Matt Root.
Present.
Tim Holt, present. Don Gorillo.
Present. Hi, everyone.
Okay, we got a full house, and I'm sure there are several others who are attending the meeting in either an advisory capacity or to observe. So welcome back to all. If you notice on your minutes, on your agenda, we have approval of minutes. That's from 5/14, but we had not distributed those minutes. It's been a long time. So I think what we're going to do is just have those minutes distributed and consider those at the next meeting when we approve the minutes of this meeting. So we will forego the pleasure of doing another roll call at the moment. Okay. In terms of introduction, it's great to have everybody back. I think the pause, in retrospect, was a good idea in the sense that, quite frankly, I don't think the school personnel could have managed the project at that time, given what was necessary in terms of getting the school up and running in the fall. And I think just for that alone, I think it was a good idea. We also had the opportunity to reflect a bit on some of the issues that we were facing as we closed. And I think it gave us a very thoughtful way to get back into the project and move forward. What we are going to do today, okay, is try to get everybody back reset in where we are and where we're headed. So we will give what we will do is give you an overview of what we see as the schedule from now until the end of schematic design. Okay, so we'll lay that out. Michael will do that. After that, we want to focus on the next approximately 60 to 90 days, which are basically the completion of the feasibility stage. If you recall, we left off, we had made significant progress with terms of feasibility, but we had not finished. We had some issues related to sizing that we were looking at in terms of the school. We had some issues related to cost per square foot, and we had some issues related to inclusions of significant parts of the school and what they would look like, i.e. the auditorium and the gymnasium. So those issues have to be resolved before we get to the end of feasibility and into schematic design. So those this is a very important part as we finish the feasibility and come up with the alternative that we want to move to schematic design, where we'll do a detailed dive into that scenario and another detailed costing, and that's what gives the town the ability to make a decision. Okay, so that's the really important work that's going to occur over the next 60 days. So first, Mike will do the big schedule, okay, through schematic design. Then we'll turn it over to Kristen, who will help us understand what's going to happen in the next approximately 80 to 90 days related to the completion of feasibility, okay? Then I will talk a little bit about responsibilities, subcommittee responsibilities, and finally Lori will talk a little bit about where we are with the ed plan and how that affects the school. So that's a lot, but if I were to just summarize as we start, if I would ask you to take two things away from this meeting, it would be, number one, this is the big schedule. This is what we're trying to do to get to fall of 2021 being ready for the town to consider the project. Okay, now that's the big schedule. And the second thing is to focus on the next approximately 2.5 months, where we will be completing the feasibility phase and take away from the discussion what has to occur in that time frame for us to complete it. So that's a lot today. So, but we'll get through that because I think we're pretty well prepared for it. So,
Tim, it's Dawn. May I, for 1 second? I think we
Sure.
should bring everyone up to speed on Matthew Johnson's.
Oh, I was just going to do that.
Oh, you were. I'm sorry. I'm ahead of you.
Why don't you do it?
Diving right in.
Why don't you go ahead and do it? You're already
No, I just wanted to say hello and welcome. And just so everyone knows, Susan Bates took on a different role at the select board, is my understanding. And newly elected select board member, Matthew Johnson, is joining us as the select board representative. So I don't know if you want to say hello in a couple words. Is it Matt or Matthew? I don't want to call you the wrong name. Matt, okay. Welcome.
Zoom decided that I'm Matthew today. So yeah, thanks for the welcome, and I really look forward to engaging with this project. I did catch up on some of the videos from this spring. So I have, seen some of what was here, and I'm curious about how the project has evolved, and hope to be an active participant. And so very exciting.
Great. We're glad to have you, and we will miss Susan. Susan was a good part of the team too, and a good liaison to the selectmen. So glad to have you with us on board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to kind of go over the top level schedule. So. And I would also just mention one last thing. When you're not speaking, if everyone would please mute. I don't know if we're doing that on a master level, but that will really help out everything. So.
Thank you, Tim. So I do have the master schedule up on the screen. I believe everybody should be able to see that now. I do want to state before we get going here that I think everybody has gotten a copy of the agenda, but after the meeting is over, I will make sure that I get a copy of all these documents that we're sharing today out to Erin and out to Tim and everybody, so that we can get that distributed to everybody, so that you'll have a copy of this that you can review after the meeting as well. So what we've tried to do here is at the first few lines of this schedule, prior to the break here, we just kind of, again, stating where we started this project when Hill first came on, basically in August of 19, and we did OPM selection, then we did designer selection in the fall. We started the feasibility study, and we brought that through to about June. As Tim mentioned, at the end of June, we had a preliminary feasibility report, which was the first draft of that feasibility, the completion of the feasibility. That outlined some of the things that we still need to evaluate, such as overall square footage, the enhanced sustainability being included, the potential for discussions on gymnasiums and auditoriums and things of that nature. And what we're going to be trying to do in a little bit more detailed review here to close out feasibility is basically adjust that report as needed, finalize it, validate the overall cost to make sure that we're on the target budget, and then that will allow us to move forward. So back in the spring, we did put the project on hold. My understanding is, that Tim and the senior leadership went to the select board in November, and we got the project restarted. So that, that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of bringing us up to today. So as an overall high level, I just want to kind of maybe, before I talk about specifics here, just kind of talk about the graphics here a little bit. We've got a couple of little red stars here. Those are kind of milestones, important things. For this group, those are things that are generally related to town activities, not necessarily designer activities or contractor activities, things like it's important things for the town rather than the project specifically. In general, the wider blue line, if I zoom in here just a little bit, so you can see it, the wider blue line, that represents roughly the dates that you'll see when I zoom back out for the intended planned time for that activity. But the little smaller blue line with the box around it is the flexibility that we've tried to build into the schedule, so that if we don't meet those dates, we can still, for example, slide this one out. And this is actually, when I zoom out, about 4 or 5 months that we could do that and still maintain this schedule. And similarly, with this milestone here for the town meeting, we put a wide box in here so that we have the ability to adjust that as needed. And so this is just a first pass here. I want everybody to understand this is a draft. This isn't us saying this is locked in stone. This is where we're looking. I'm going to say that when we reviewed this with SMMA, we took a very conservative approach here. We do think that this is more than doable, in other words. So when I get down into it, the construction of the building is 24 months. We think that, an aggressive schedule might be 18 months, a reasonable schedule might be 21, 22 months, but we've carried 24 for now. So it does get us out, into the building a little bit later than we wanted. So we want to get some input on that. So if anybody has questions as I go through this, I'll be happy to answer them. But what we're looking at is a big picture here is we're going to be looking over the next month or so at getting any feedback from the committee on the old report. So if there's anything that, that you looked at last
committee members of the school department, Lori, and the design subcommittee members. So I think that design subcommittee really captures a really good cross section of your interest groups and the project stakeholders. So we'll be starting with kind of a meeting to revisit those goals and the vision for the project, big picture, because as Mike and Tim mentioned, some open components were the performance space / auditorium and the gym. And I think we want to drill down into what everyone's goals are for those two spaces, in addition to looking at the ed program in the building. So that will kind of dovetail and overlap quite a bit with step 2, which is that confirming the ed plan, the auditorium size, gym size, and the athletic field scope. So another item that we didn't really drill down into much last in the spring was the on-site fields. Although the property is a very large one, we know it has that very extensive slope, steep slope that consumes a lot of the site. So the flat area of the site is not actually that large, especially when you take out then the existing building, which we're planning on leaving up and operational during the construction. So we need to revisit with you, your site development priorities and fold that into our consideration set. So with our big picture goal setting and then kind of a drill down into the ed plan, auditorium, gym, and site program, we plan on, in advance of the January 7th meeting, coming back to the SBC with some recommendations from the whole cross section of sustainability, site program, design subcommittee, and the school. So that's a quick 4 weeks away at this point. So, so that's going to go very quickly, and we'll be, I know the Sustainability Subcommittee is already working on setting up a meeting, and we'll be working with the Design Subcommittee for next week. So then after we have all of those major pieces developed and the recommendation in front of the SBC, the design team is going to commence with the updating of the space summary and the site program in a more detailed manner. So we'll be taking all the information from these upcoming meetings and putting it down into kind of quantities, really, something a little bit more tangible. And then we'll come back to the SBC again with those more tangible pieces and be looking for your buy-in to move on with the concept development. So depending on how these items are all come together, treetop teams may take on quite a different shape. You know, we left off last year with treetop teams. It did not include a larger gymnasium. It did not include an auditorium. And so depending on how these goals and the vision unfolds, we may be looking at some bigger tweaks to the site and building concepts. So we'll be working on those in much of February. And again, just a quick 4 weeks for that. And then we'll be looking in the beginning of March to come back with the recommendation on the site and building scope that will include the sustainability considerations for approval in early March. So that's really the big picture. This table we developed just to help everyone understanding with, you know, who's going to be kind of in that point person seat in the beginning, and then where the review will happen, and then the approving authority. So you'll see across the board, the approving authority is the SBC. The one nuance is that the school committee does typically have involvement in approving the ed plan. So the Concord Middle School ed plan, once wrapped up, will be brought in front of the school committee typically for approval. And that's in the MSBA world. So, you know, Concord specific, we can discuss if that's the process as well. Then let's see. So, and then otherwise you'll see that in the confirmation of scope, you'll see that auditorium and gym are very much going to be worked out with the design subcommittee in terms of what the community is looking for and what the whole project stakeholder group is looking for with those spaces. And then for site and field scope, we assume that we'll be getting a lot of input from Concord Middle School on what sports are played, when they're played, how they're played, and so that we can make sure that that site and field scope is very well informed. And then of course, your educational leadership team, the superintendent, Justin, and CMS will be at the in the driver's seat for the ed plan. And then you'll see in step 3, again, this space summary, SMMA will take the lead on making those updates, and we'll review all of those updates with the school to make sure we interpreted the ed plan and everything we heard correctly, as well as the design subcommittee for buy-in across the board. Conceptual site plans, kind of the same pattern. We'll be taking that approved space summary, putting it into concepts, and then bringing it forward to the design subcommittee to make a recommendation to the SBC. So at this time, it's up for discussion still in terms of how this all unfolds with making sure we get the meetings. And we also know that February break is in the mix in this time period. So we're trying to make sure that we don't schedule any meetings or require any input from you during that February recess. So it's up for discussion as to whether the committee in the beginning of March, when all of these pieces have come together with a presentation, if that will be sufficient for you to approve the release of schematic design, or if you want to wait until the entirety of the report is updated. So that step 6 for just updating the report for record, I would look to you all to give us feedback as to whether you feel like you want the full breadth of the report updated in advance of your approval, or if we can do that overlapping assuming we have the scope all pinned down and presented in the best way for you all. So I guess I would pause there and ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, which is relative to where the project stopped before the pause. Where were we and how many of these steps are in effect a redo of some of the steps that were being done before that had already been completed in effect? You know, that gets us back to where we were when we left off.
I would say that given where we landed in the spring, a lot of it's an overhaul of everything. You know, Tim summarized in the beginning that, you know, we at the end concluded with project cost and scope open items. And I think that the entire project group is really going to work toward looking at their spaces again.
But so was the project effectively at what is on this chart, step 5, before that they were at the point of selecting a preferred concept?
Yep.
And so what this means is effectively the pause was from June until really February 25th of 2021, because that's what gets us back to where we were, you know, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah, a little bit like that. I would just interject that we had, when we were, right before we paused, we had come up and we had costed the concept that we had defined, and it was higher than we expected. Okay, and I think there was a consensus that we had to do something about that. Okay. In addition to that, we had not made decisions yet relating to the size of the gymnasium or the size of the auditorium. Those had not been made when we were at the pause. So I think you're right, Matt, that some of this is a rethinking of what we were doing after we had gotten certain cost information. Okay, you know, in terms of, is there a way to do this within what we had previously outlined as the financial range for the project? So yes, I think what you say is partially true, but we had not yet made decisions related to the auditorium and gymnasium. So some of it is not. We would have had to make those decisions anyway. So
yeah, I guess it was just speaking to that 2-year delay in the move date, you know, that in fact, if we're looking at a 6-month pause and saying, oh, well, there were just 6 months and now there's a 2-year impact. Well, that's partially a good question, but it's also that the pause itself is effectively more like 8 to 9 months to get us back to the point where at least people thought they were. I think that there did need to be refactoring in the objectives of the project, but that just from a, you know, Gantt chart perspective, the real impact is longer than that 6 months that's indicated.
Yep.
Yeah. The delay should be inclusive of this process.
I think the delay, as I see it, is because that refactoring is based on new information more than it is on the interruption itself. You know, because we knew what we knew in February, we knew we had to do that refactoring, whether it was in March of last year, of course it wasn't, or picking it up now. Kristen, where I'd like you to go for a moment is speak again about step number 6. What are I can imagine the benefits, but what are the risks of working with the report prior to final approval? Any risks there?
Sorry, I'm on mute. So our charge is really to make sure that we provide you all the information you need in order to make the decision. So my goal at the conclusion of selecting the preferred concept is that meeting will be a presentation of all of the recommendations and decisions so that you can feel comfortable making a decision. The report is a detailed narrative that backs up all of that, but it's kind of a long form. It's for record. It's for the community who maybe didn't have the benefit of watching all of the meetings, but they can read the process. Because you all are kind of up close and part of it, nothing in that report will be a surprise. And all of the major scope components will have been incrementally reviewed and approved completely.
So it's not a significant risk or issue.
Yeah, so Cord, if I can, I think everything that's being approved in February is just being put into one package. You know, there's no updates, if you will, necessarily expected to be happening in that time period.
Got it. Thank you.
Consolidation.
Yeah, I think because this is a public project, it's intended to be a basically the record of what we've all been through for now more than a year and a half, right? Like almost a 2-year process to so that someone, to Kristen's point, could just open it up and figure out how when we made a decision, how we got there, what the discussions were, you know. So it's a documentation that basically outlines the process we've been through. At the MSBA level, it's for their use, and it has certain certain requirements that you have to include: meeting minutes of all the SBC meetings, and cost estimates and reconciliation and VE items. Like there's a whole list of things, and I assume SIMS will include a lot of that because it's standard protocol, so that someone could go dig out any piece of information that we've all been privy to along the way.
Yep, and we are not planning on redoing any site investigations. The survey was done as part of the original study, the geotech, the geoenvironmental, all of those items are complete and will just be retained in the report as complete and informing our current process. And I suppose, Matt, I was thinking a little bit more about your question. And I think that when we started the process a year ago with the town, it was a lot about discovery. We were building up the Concord Middle School project. We were testing, there's a lot of analysis done on different approaches to sustainability, a deep dive, different incremental reviews of everything. So, and then similarly with the auditorium and the performance space, we're developing all the various options. And so we're kind of working bottom up and really a focus on the ed plan and the space summary in an idealized fashion. And so I think we were kind of working a bottom up to see where we landed. And now I think we're taking a new look at it and kind of going top down. So what have we learned, and how can we capture that, and what refinements can we make to stay within the $100 million project cost cap?
But the original project plan didn't anticipate, I guess, that top-down review.
Correct. Yeah. Early on, we knew, the whole team knew that there's a lot of competitive, very, very aspirational goals for sustainability, ed plan, auditorium, gym, and I think we knew that it wasn't going to be fitting into that $100 million cap, but we needed to test it out and really explore all the options and see where we landed, so that we can make informed decisions on how to get it back into that container.
Okay, I think if we can, that was great, Kristen. Thank you very much. I think there's a lot here, okay, and everybody's, I would not surmise that by the lack of questions, there aren't a lot of questions. There's a lot going on here, and basically those questions might go to how are we going to get all that done? This is a lot to do in a 2.5 month period. So I'd like to go to Mike, the presentation I had there to talk about our committee, and our committee is how it's organized. Okay. First off, let me say, I think you draw from this, okay, that for the committee, the short-term goal, and I'll call the short-term goal through early March, basically the process that Kristen just analyzed there, is basically to complete the feasibility study and release the design team to start schematic design by the beginning of March. Okay, that's what we are focused on. Okay, you notice I have a little asterisk there in March 2021. okay, that we have a March 2nd goal on there, and we will learn a lot in the first couple of weeks here of what we're doing. We may have to, I put that asterisk there because we may have to move that March 2nd date to a week later or something. You know, that's not the important part. The important part is in this short time frame that we get to schematic design relatively quickly and make these decisions. Okay, so I want to make sure that if we go to the next slide, how are we going to do that? Now we have we have subcommittees. And one of the significant focal points for the decision-making here is the discussions, the detailed discussions that will occur at the design subcommittee. Okay, very, very important focus here. Now, when we're thinking about this, it's impossible in a group of 20 to have the type of detailed designs, discussions and back and forth that you can in a smaller group that's very focused on the issues. So what the strategy here is to consider these significant decisions in the design subcommittee and then bring them back to the large committee, which does the ultimate approvals. So what the charge for this committee is to support the design process with review, direction, and recommendations for the educational program space requirements, the gymnasium and auditorium direction, the site planning decisions, what is involved with the site program, the overall sustainability. I want to come back. There's a sustainability committee also, so I want to talk about that overlap. But this group has to make all these things sort of fit together, and then they have to inform and obtain approval from the full committee as necessary. So that's a lot. Over that, in the reality terms, we have this $100 million budget. What we really want to do is support our educational program robustly in the educational part of the school, but also have the ability to do a medium-sized gymnasium and auditorium, okay, and to get to the net zero ready sustainability level. Okay, that involves trade-offs. It involves discussions. It involves how does this all fit together? If we do this here, if we can do this and all that. And the focal point for those discussions in terms of the trade-offs and the recommendations related to those is our design subcommittee. So Court and the group, I've listed the members here. The Court, Lori, Dawn, Chris Popoff, Charlie Parker, Matt Root, and we have Cameron in there. I don't ever remember who is formally a member, but he's heavily involved in these. That is the focal point where these discussions are going to start, the trade-offs start to get made, and the recommendations for decisions come back to the full committee. Okay, this is a obviously significant responsibility for these people because they'll be going back and forth with Kristen and Mike as to Kristen is going to say, I need this resolved now. And this is the place where we have the discussions related to resolving it. So that's kind of the charge. This is a big focal point and a big responsibility. If we go to the next slide. So how does sustainability fit in? It's been my observation over the projects that I've been on, and certainly this project, there are two levels of the sustainability discussion. One is a strategy and how it fits with the rest of the school. And the second item is all of the technical issues related to how we're going to do it, okay? The how we are going to do it, we have the sustainability committee that must inform the other committee about that, okay? So that's what their task is, okay? When we say when the design committee said we're going to net zero, and then the actual detailed elements of how that's done will occur in the sustainability committee, which we've centered more of the expertise related to that. And you see the members here, Matt, Charlie Parker, Kate, Parker there twice, he's so good, and Russ Hughes is on that committee, okay. So that's that. The next slide, please. Obviously, and I know Pat and Heather are thinking, wow, there's a lot going on there. And how are we going to communicate this to to the stakeholders. Okay, so the communications subcommittee is charged with the plan, design, and implementation of a communications program for interested parties that provides relevant, transparent information and opportunities for feedback with considerations to the difficulty of time of COVID. We've talked about this through the pause a little bit, and as we went into it, we've learned a lot about communications with the parent group, extending that to the community in terms of the things that are going on in this 2.5-month period is a challenge. And that's a challenge that the communications subcommittee has. What are the right community interactions, whether they be Zoom meetings, whether they be written communications, et cetera, at the right points? And I'm not prescribing what the right points are. You're going to have to work with the design team and Kristen to know what's happening when and get those communications elements in place such that we do have a dialogue with the community so they're informed, number one, and number two, have the ability to ask questions. So that's communications. And finally, the last is finance. And this may seem a little more detailed. There's a few things that the finance committee has to do during this period. And one of my thoughts are, our partners now, we have to figure out how this whole new situation fits in with the contracts of our partners, okay, and where they are. We've got to work through that also to get to understand the implications for the partners in terms of the cost of the project or the cost of their contracts. Secondarily, this whole issue of design continuity, okay, that what I mean by there is, if when we get down to the town making a decision, how do we keep going if we want to, in order to save time with the design through that process with a little bit extra money? This group is not making that decision. The finance team has to look into that, when the decisions have to be made and how it fits in. What are the things that have to be done in order to do that, and how and when we have to make those decisions so we're aware of them. And then the third thing I'm asking this committee to do is to inform the larger committee to research and take a look at the decision between design bid and contractor at risk, and bring that issue in an informed manner to the bigger committee. Okay, I see, talking with the people that are working on our project who know this well, and perhaps some others, to look at experiences of other projects related to design, build, and contractor at risk, so we understand financial implications and project implications. As that, I'm not, again, the finance subcommittee is not making this decision. I'm just, because there is so much work on the plates of the others to get through the design, I'm asking this committee to take the lead in informing the rest of the committee about how one would make that decision. So that's my ideas of how we're organized. Now, I think it's incumbent upon the chairman of each of these committees to work closely with Kristen and Mike about when they schedule their meetings. We want to make sure that every meeting we have has a purpose and has a direction as to what we want to get out of that interaction, okay? Such that we can maintain the schedule that Kristen has laid out here for the next 6 months, or next 3 months, excuse me. So please, the chairman, Court, Matt, Heather and Pat and myself, in terms of finance, stay a good touch with Mike and Kristen as to when it is important to have a meeting of your subcommittee and what is necessary in terms of the decisions that are made. Because these are, I know it's somewhat imposing. These are large decisions, but basically we now have to sit down and work it out and make the decision. So that there's a dialogue involved with that, and then there's bringing it back to the large committee. So that's my impression of how we're organized. So I think I want to go back, questions again, so that we're all sort of on the same page as to what we're doing here. Anything on that part?
No, I think you've sobered us all up with the work ahead, Tim.
Yeah, but it's, in some ways, we're right down at the, every project you get here, there are major decisions that have to be made, and we're moving into a period where that has to occur, and it's okay. That's why we're here. Okay. Anything else?
Well, I'm encouraged. I'll just give you that general sense. I'm encouraged that it looks like we're picking the reins up very, very, very carefully and very thoroughly here. So thank you to everybody who got us to this morning.
Sorry, Tim, is it possible to put back up Kristen's last sheet that she was going through, the more detailed timeline? I'm sure we're all gonna get that, but,
Somebody can, I can't, but somebody
or,
can.
yes, or whoever's driving here. Is that Mike?
Yes,
Not
that's me.
that.
Is this the sheet you're talking about, or are you?
No,
No, the dialogue one.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay. I just am looking back, especially as we think big picture here about what we're trying to create for early January most, and making sure that's realistic over the holidays and everything. Okay.
So I
Thank
see that playing out as one, I'll be speaking with Court specifically about how to lay this out, but whether we do, if we can fit in 2 design subcommittee meetings, then we can break this into 2 parts. Alternatively, I would recommend 1 longer, and then we can handle a lot of content in 1 longer design subcommittee meeting before the holidays. So I think that steps 1 and 2 can be discussed in 2 small or 1 long. And I think that is achievable, over the course of the next week and a half, depending on everyone's availability. We have, 10 days to have that scheduled. And then everything else kicks over into January. In the next 10 days, we'll also be looking to meet with Lori and Justin specifically to kind of do a refresher. So that'll be another meeting, but smaller group.
The ed plan in particular, where is that, and what still needs to, how much work still has to be done to go into that? Maybe that's a question for Lori.
Yeah, I know that's one of the agenda items on here. So we've got a very cursory.
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I can wait. If
It is on the agenda, yeah.
Okay, that's right. Sorry, I forgot.
Sure, give it a little update.
Okay, we can wait. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're not, we're mostly anticipating all the work between now and the January 7th meeting. And there is a week, the holiday of the 1st falls on a Friday. So the week of the 4th, there are a couple days in advance of the meeting of the 7th to also squeeze in some touch bases, if we need a follow-up meeting after the holidays before the SBC meeting. But we're definitely planning on more of a workshop format, brainstorming format, goal setting, kind of just getting the parameters, getting our grasp on the parameters again. So we're not expecting any decisions to be made until January.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing for you, Heather, just to keep in mind, I think for you and Pat, it might not be bad for us to kind of get a game plan together. And once that January 7th, hits, it's going to be kind of a full court press on getting this out to the public, and that communication is, starting, out to the public side, right after New Year's, basically.
Yeah, so maybe we can let's catch up separately, but let's coordinate.
Yeah, and then Heather, I think it's what's really important is there's a little bit of a 2-part process there, so that when we come together, when we coalesce around a set of decisions, that this is sort of what it's going to look like before it may be approved by set in stone. You want to have an information meeting so people understand where they are and they have opportunity to get feedback.
Right.
But then when the decision is made, then there's another one to say, okay, we considered the feedback, we thought about it carefully, and here is the final decision of what we're going to do. So just so there, I think it's important to inform people as it's going on, as these are the decisions that are made, and number 2, you garner that feedback in the process, not post process, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a tricky one. You got to thread a needle.
right.
Yeah, Tim, can you just speak a little bit more to that? I see that in early January, we want to confirm the auditorium size and the gym size. Those are two big community concerns. I guess I'm not completely understanding how we can let people know that we're having these conversations, or maybe that's the answer. We need to let people know we're having these conversations. But in early January, the committee's gonna be making a decision about those issues.
Yes.
Yeah, giving people the opportunity to give feedback before that. Heather, you and I are just gonna have to noodle this out.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
need to.
I'll be honest,
it
and
takes
this
a
is,
little
yeah,
time.
you're saying kind of what I'm thinking. I'm sitting here struggling, not sure what to say, like in the big context of the large meeting here, so I don't want to take it too
Yeah, no,
far
it's a
off,
cha-
but
there's no doubt it's a challenge, and it has to be done thoughtfully, and the timing is really critical, I think.
so it is, and I will just, it'll be my last point here, but between now and January 7th, we're not going to have a chance to really do public input and feedback and everything. I mean, I think to do in the last 2 weeks of December to ask people to come to a, last minute forum on gym size is unrealistic. So I worry about those two being on there also, because I'm not sure we'll be able to actually get public feedback.
So if I can comment on this, I think it feels a little atypical with how sometimes projects are developed, but we have this large committee that we're on as representatives of the community to sift through data and weigh competing options against each other in a much more detailed way than you would normally do at a public forum. And I think what we're trying to do is do that job, do our job, play that role for the community, and balance cost, size, program to come up with a right-sized set of building blocks, if you will, whether it's the gym or the auditorium or the education plan or any of the spaces, and go through that information as a committee and make what we think is the right recommendation for the project based on all of that information.
Mhm.
And then go to the community after we've kind of sifted through all of that and come up with our own recommendation and communicate with the public. Here's all of the variables that were on the table. Here's how we looked at them. And here's why we think like this is the right size versus, what size gym do you want? What size auditorium do you want? And I think that we've gotten some of that feedback. I mean, it's been a while, but we did get some of that feedback. But someone can say, we want a larger gym as a standalone statement, and it's a valid statement, but it has to be vetted in the context of all of the competing pressures of the space under the budget we have. And so I think that's why we have a committee, is to kind of go through those in a more detailed way. So that's where I think the public input on our recommendation is really where I think we're going to be targeting after we've gone through the information and made the decision. And I guess in my view, in my experience, that's relatively normal for a building project, especially a complicated, large one like this. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, definitely.
Yeah, Steve, and I would agree, and I think that we need to emphasize the importance of pulling out those communications of a year ago from the community. We do have them.
Oh, absolutely.
And secondly, to work with, I think design and communications have to work together so that the public knows that we've got some public meetings coming up in December, so that we
Yeah.
broadcast that as effectively as possible.
Yeah, that can certainly be a public message there. Okay.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, we might want to, I definitely want to get to Dr. Hunter and a short presentation on some high-level thoughts of where we are with the ed program process.
Yeah, and Tim, they are going to be very high level. So we've got a cursory draft that's Hill and SMMA have seen with the ed plan. We understand the need for the document to really justify and outline what our program looks like, because that's clearly driving space decisions. So we're working with the department chairs at the middle school so that they can really flesh out the content areas that they organize and lead, as well as we'll work with the specialists to make sure those programs get well documented. You know, I'll admit the challenges here that we're doing this while we're operating in crisis. So we're going to gather everything over the next 2 weeks. And then we had hoped and planned and committed to a complete document for January 1st. To the comment made earlier, Court and I talked yesterday about bringing it to the Concord School Committee on the 5th so that they, you know, it might be not quite the exact order of who sees what when, but that so they can actually really digest and formally approve that document. So it's all moving forward. I think as part of those conversations, we're also considering what the space options could be in terms of recognizing the need for you know, some shifting here of square footage to a smaller size and trying to vet the impact on programs, since I think our goal is to maintain the viability and, you know, robustness of the programs we currently run while we modify square footage and costs. So I think those will somewhat happen simultaneously. That's where we are.
Okay, we have a lot, you know, we've outlined a lot to do here in this meeting. But I always, my feeling on most projects, you get the most nervous when you look like you have a big task, and the mitigation of that is to actually do it. You know, okay, that it becomes, you feel so much more relieved when you actually sit down to make the decisions, move along, and get things in place. Okay, it's the most anxious part is before. Okay, when you know it's large, but when you get down to it, this is an informed group. We've been thinking about this for a year and a half. We've been involved in the details of it for a long time. Okay, I think that the people that are involved in the decisions are well equipped to understand the trade-offs and make the decisions. So this is what we're going to do. So we're nearing 9. So I want to see. I don't know if we have any specific correspondence that we have to update. Laura, you might just want, because this is a public meeting on the building committee, update the interactions that you had with the MSBA.
Yeah, they called to check in November. They're still in process on their 2020 statements of interest, which is notably a very different timeline than they normally are operating on. Usually we get notified at this time of the year as to whether you're going to be accepted, and they're still in the process of screening statements. They don't know how much money they have to work with. It all sounded very familiar to the impact of COVID on all of us. So they were really just feeling out whether districts still wanted their document considered. Given where we are in the discussion here, after consulting with Stephen and Dawn and Tim, we said, yes, we have no reason not to want it considered. And we're all very open and clear. They're aware we're to this part of the project. So I don't know when we're going to hear more. They were unsure of any of their timelines, and yet at the same time have already put out that the window will be opening for 2021 statements of interest. So it's kind of COVID confusion, like a lot of other things. So the goal was to just leave all options open at this point. I'll just remind you, if they did accept us, the work we're doing now becomes advisory, and we're back to starting over, including going out for, you know, design and OPM. So there's really nothing to report other than they're trying to figure out what they're doing, and we decided to stay in the mix for lack of another direction at the moment. So we'll keep you posted if I hear back.
All right. Any other correspondence that we need to note? I know there are people on the call. Are there any public comment related to the discussion today? We have time for a little. All right. One thing I just want to say as we quit, we're looking at a reasonably tight schedule with a lot of important decisions to make, and that will involve a certain amount of anxiety and tension. I would implore everybody to remember that our two partners in terms of working with us and with working with each other, to understand that everybody's interests are in the right direction, to communicate well, okay? Talk to each other if you have an issue. Our group, make sure that we understand where Kristen is in the process and what's important for us to do and make decisions on. Communicate, ask questions, assume that everybody is moving as they see us in the right directions. And when you think it's not, communicate, talk, because it's a big task, but it's also a very good group. So thanks for everybody's time today, and look forward to getting the project moving again. And with that, I would go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we want to set a time for the next meeting?
I think we talked about that first Thursday in January, did we not?
Okay, I just want to make sure that we had, so that it'll be January 7th.
Yeah, confirm that. I mean, look at your schedule with Kristen and make sure that is useful in terms of what we need to do as a committee, but I would suggest that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we kind of put that out formally, and we'll work with the subcommittee heads on all the other meetings and make sure we get those out and coordinated with the public notices.
All right. Okay, I would ask for an emotion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? I think we can do this one at least by voice. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. Happy
Thank you.
holidays. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.